Hi, I'm the True Gamer, giving up my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. Today, I wanted to originally do this video for Pride Month, but life got in the way. Massive migraines. It really just stopped me from doing anything. Anyway, I really wanted to do it, but, well, it's too late. But that doesn't prevent me from still doing it and still talking about Pride characters, and how I can say that this is actually one of the few games in gaming in general that has a straight up Pride character. I say Pride character since it's free-forming because the main character is a bit more than just a lesbian, because she's also a bit of a non-gender binary, which I don't deal with that stuff. Anyway, point being is, it's interesting. I mean, like, we don't usually get those characters, and that's nice. Sad part is it had to be in the way back, and we still haven't had any good ones, but hey, what can we do? But let's talk a bit about the backstory.
I'm sorry for the preamble. It's just nice to have a Pride character just be a character and just not some other piled on bullshit that just takes away from it all. Though with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the game's backstory, since it's actually quite interesting. Untitled Filena was made by Takeshi Shudo, who is best known for writing some of the scripts for Pokemon, where he also created Lugia, which already puts him on my good list forever since that's one of my favorite Pokemons. Anyway, during his time with the magazine Animag, he started writing a light novel series, well, Eternal Filena, and this happened for about 9 years until he got it collected all. And it also got an OVA series, which, yeah, it's just basically a bunch of stuff that happened at the beginning, but that's a story for another day.
So, is it any good? Well, let's check that out. With Eternal Filena. Yes, I know her name is not Eternal Filena, but it's actually called Eternal Filena. But one, Filena sucks the name, and two, it flows better. Eternal Filena. You could just say it in one go instead of just pausing for it. Just say Eternal Filena, Filena. It's a dumb name.
We started with a minor intro that explains the world, that it's taken over by something called the Empire. It basically has a class system where Kleshas are basically less than humans. Basically trash. However, there are people treated less than that, those called the Battlers, where they must fight and train in the Colosseum. Their only hope they can have is a swift and painless death. We follow Filena, who is actually training with her father, who also tells her to never reveal her gender since, well, she would be taken as a slave for very unsavory purposes. I mean, hell, she gets a concubine when she becomes a full-on battler. Also, this is Lola. She will be our wife, and I mean full-on wife since, spoilers? They get together and stay together. After a few battles which include her grandfather, she actually learns of her past. She's actually the princess of a country called Filocera that the Empire destroyed. No idea why, but anyway, now our job is to now find the Sword of Filena. She may reclaim her kingdom and defeat the Empire, which she does.
However, that causes problems since, well, there aren't that many important moments in the game to begin with. So much so that I could really just not talk about them.
I'll try to throw a few examples. It's a little odd at times. A woman named Malika, who after we killed her husband because we were forced to in the Colosseum, basically blinds us, which actually does affect us for a good while. In fact, if you don't switch your first member to someone else, you'll have this effect. And yes, it's quite annoying. I mean, granted, she did this because of the Black Devils, basically the Empire's Black Ops, because they had taken her son, which I don't see why. I mean, like, she would have done this anyway, which is ironic also since they then betray her for no real good reason. I mean, like, they tried to give her something, but it's not very interesting, and they don't give it enough time to make it meaningful. I mean, by the time they tried to turn her character around, she dies in the literal next segment. Like, no joke. It's like, what the hell are you even trying to do? Granted, I thought they were just gonna go back on this, but nope, they just straight up killed her. They then tried to make her son, who we met earlier, try to kill them through experimentation, but that fails and it goes again nowhere because it's not meaningful enough. We barely see it happen and we barely care about the character. as his turnaround is only ever predicated by one thing that you most likely forgot since it wasn't that meaningful. You know, I'm not a real big fan of Final Fantasy VI, but even with a cast that big, they did try to meaningfully give them enough character and time with them, so that we care about each of their situation. Well, most of them, except Go-Go. Nobody cares about Go-Go. I do, but that's because I'm a Final Fantasy V fanboy. Actually, I can boil down most of the characters in this game down to a point. That one doctor character who appears like twice just disappears and does nothing, heals our eyes. That was a thing. Which is also weird enough because we go to another place to get our eyes fixed because it wasn't good enough apparently. I'm not entirely sure why. Where we meet Laris, who, dude, I don't even care enough to even reference him that much. In fact, my original script didn't even include him. That's how pointless he was. We also had this rebel army that doesn't really add much and really goes nowhere. I mean, it was also made by Ness, who was a battle writer who disappeared for a while, then comes back and rejoins the team, and really adds nothing to the team. There's also Melatama, who just doesn't even matter, that I, again, almost didn't write her in. Cause as far as I was concerned, the only thing she ever did was give birth to a kid that really didn't do anything. And the legit only good thing she ever did to us was give us her dog, who was actually the best team member. And with that awesome segue there, let's talk about the combat. Since it's not going to be long and ironically too long for its own good. Combat is a turn-based RPG. This one's a little weird with its feel. Like, I've been told that this game plays like Mystic Quest, which I really don't agree with since that gives this game kind of a down mark, since I find that, well, Mystic Quest to be more boring than this game. If anything, it feels like a concept of Final Fantasy II that just has a normal leveling system to gain skills, which is a decent way to do things, but that means sometimes I won't use certain weapons for characters since it would mean I won't be able to use them for everyone. Though that is actually strange when I remember that there are only like 5 weapons in the game, like sword, knives, spears, hammers, and medicine. And yeah, like swords and knives are actually one category, which yeah, like there's like only 4. And there's a technical 5th one with crystal weapons, which...
And we don't even get the coolness of a crystal chainsaw! Crystal chainsaw! What the hell, people? I swear on my life. That would have been so awesome!
And even then, those weapons really all just boil down to damage dealers, except medical, which just basically a way to use healing magic, in quote. Yeah, actually, this game doesn't have a magic system for some reason. That was actually a little surprising to me, because, I don't know, usually a lot of games that are usually in fantasy areas usually use magic, but this game doesn't. In fact, this entire game is more steampunk, if anything? Low sci-fi, if that makes sense. Because I repeat again, crystal chainsaw. And I feel like that's really the game's biggest problem. There's nothing really after that. Once you figure out everything and how things work, it doesn't really unpack combat anymore. In fact, I figured out early on that at a certain point, only gear matters. Yeah, stats affect stuff, but gear is overall pulling the weight here. And most times than not, finding good gear was easy because you just had to go to a black market seller and buy up any of the good gear. And they're usually better than the normal brand store shop. And sometimes I really had to wonder if I really had to do much in combat, since, again, combat never really challenged me anymore since my gear was so good that the damage that my enemies were giving off was never enough to really get me to worry about anything at all. Well, except like 2 defeats in the game, which one of them was on autopilot, so I didn't actually know what was going on until I came back. Actually, speaking of auto battle, this one's weird since you can actually program them to act in a certain manner, which is actually pretty cool, but it's still lacking in a way where they'll still do dumb things, but I mean, that's cool and all. And I mean, like, sure, I rarely used it. I only ever, like, used it for grinding, which I kind of regret because I didn't really need to do it since this game is way too easy. Well, except for the final boss, but that's a whole other matter. And in the end, that is really the problem. most fights don't matter, and even boss fights, except the last one, don't really affect anything. They all feel the same. I mean, the concept of combat is decent enough. There's a good idea here. It's just so long and tedious that by the end, I just wanted it to end. I mean, I never had to really think about what moves to use, just use the strongest one since I could actually easily refill my HP and TP really easily since I had way too much money and just bought so many healing items that I didn't actually need the heal spots in the game to really help me much. Which is also weird since there's like a lot of them in the game for some reason. Hell, they were mostly before a boss, so I could generally just heal up, grind if I needed to, which I really didn't. I mean, hell, if I ever really needed to save before a boss, I could, since you could actually save anywhere you want. Which, that is nice, since I feel like sometimes players just want to be able to save wherever they want, since we don't all have this free time that people believe. Though, talking about things wanting to end, the one thing I really wanted to be ended in the plot, since I'm going back to the plot now, was so many, and I mean so many Black Devil scenes, that really added nothing. I mean, they can literally all boil down to this.
We must capture them at once. Go, send out number 155698676. Yes, sir. This will be excellent. I've returned, sir, and the mission was a failure. Damn, how could this happen? Also, sir, we've learned something about them. What is it? Do tell me, because I seem to not know this stuff already. Plot-relevant stuff, sir. Damn, we must stop them at once. Send out number 5569529. At once! Of course, sir. That is literally all their scenes go.
Hell, if we didn't have to fight so many, I would have actively believed they were all the same stat-wise. And I mean, like, I even doubt that, but still, I would believe that since they all felt the same.
I'm just gonna pretend for a little bit that you see my GOD review where I talked about how the ending kind of went in a weird direction even though it didn't need to. Because that happens here too. And it's even less... It makes even less sense. I don't even know how.
Okay, let's just talk about it. It's that weird. So, we actually get to the capital of the Empire and defeat the final Black Devil. He actually turns out to be the real leader. Don't ask me, it never really made any sense to begin with. And after defeating him, you think you would have won, but nope. You then see... And I wish I was joking since I really don't get why they made it. We meet this thing called Fotis. Just remove that O and yeah, they were really on the nose with that. What the hell? He then tells us to just find the pot of life that will return the sea to normal, as we must fight the spirit of hate because the Kool-Aid Man's red. I don't know. What's weirder is that you can entirely remove it and nothing of real value would have been lost since it adds nothing, does nothing, and I doubt it touches any of the things this game was really going for, which I think I don't get, which, trust me on this, I don't know what the heck is going on with the themes of this game, since they're not really conveyed well, if I'm being very honest. But at least let me be nice to the game, since I want to be at least courteous to it, because it does one thing that I really did enjoy. That being the relationship between Filena and Lila. It feels natural, they talk about things. I mean, I really enjoyed them when they talked to each other. It got very good, and I worked really nice when it resulted in a good relationship. I'm just more annoyed that there's nothing more good around it, you know what I mean? The best way I can describe this game's problem is that it's a rough draft problem. Basically, they had an idea of what was going to happen, but that was it. There was no time to add more things in, just here's what's going to happen, not a lot of much of expansion on those things. Hell, I can extend this to the gameplay too, since, yeah, it had a cool idea, but not enough interesting things around it for the time. Which, speaking of time, do you want to know how much time I actually spent on this game? Since that is actually weird, since I thought this game would be a little longer. Overall, the game took me about 10 hours if I exclude the grinding, since that did take up some time. And also needing a guide to get through some stuff, since I do actually blame myself for not noticing some things, but at the same time it was really dumb at the same time. Like this puzzle. I didn't know the answer because how the hell was I supposed to know? Or needing to talk to a certain person after talking to one other person in a sequence which the game never really makes important to notice. Speaking of the important thing, how they all look. Well, basically this game, to me at least, looks like a little more polished version of Mystic Quest, if I'm being fairly honest. I mean, like, I don't want to mean that in a bad way, since I did like how Mystic Quests look. I mean, like, they're fine, I guess. I mean, like, I don't hate them, but none of them were really that interesting to begin with. Actually, speaking of the enemy designs, I didn't remember any of them either. They're very non-interesting. They're just not that interesting enough to notice. In fact, the most interesting things about the enemies were their names, like Marky and Sub, which you should do and hit that subscribe button. Sorry, it's hard enough to make a good joke like that. I mean, like, I would also talk about the music, but it's not that interesting either, since the best thing I remember was the battle theme, and it's alright, it's good. I mean, overall, the game's soundtrack wasn't bad. I had to listen to it on my own, and yeah, they're pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, the intro theme song was actually pretty damn good. I remember that one.
At the end of the day, the game's okay. Just okay. Regardless of how I wanted the game to be, it's overall still okay. I rate it a solid C. When it reaches its highs, it's a somewhere a C+, but most times than not, it's C-. I did not quite hate it, but still. Anyway, next time, well, the world might be ending, but it'll just be with you.